everyone, and welcome to the U.S. History midterm recording. I'm going to actually be reading the midterm to you, the questions and the answer options. In this particular version of the U.S. History midterm test, we are covering units 3 through 7. And we have a total of 35 questions. The last two are pretty much extra credit. So the first 33 are the actual original questions with 2 tacked on for extra credit for you. Let's get started with reading the test. As I go through, make sure you're following along to help you take your test and complete it. I'll be reading through the answer options as well, as I stated before. Make sure as you take your test to click Save as you go, and then click Submit for grading in order for your test to show up in the grade book and for your score to be recorded successfully. First question, what was George Washington's belief about U.S. foreign policy? The United States should form a strong alliance with France, the United States should remain neutral, or the United States should be open to alliances with all nations. Number 2, what acquisition doubled the size of the United States and offered control of the Mississippi River? The Florida Cession, the Lewis and Clark Expedition, or the Louisiana Purchase? Number 3, which are related to the War of 1812? Electing James Madison, forming a navy and creating an alliance with France, burning Washington, riding the Star-Spangled Banner and fighting the Battle of New Orleans, signing a treaty with Canada, creating a national bank, and increasing the size of Congress. Number 4, what was the Monroe Doctrine? The position that colonization by European countries would not be tolerated in the Americas, the plan for resolving the financial crisis that followed the Panic of 1890, and or the last option, the series of treaties negotiated following the War of 1812. Number 5, which group describes Andrew Jackson's supporters? Group A, small farmers and others that distrusted banks, strong supporters of slavery, proponents of westward expansion, and people who questioned the market economy. Or Group B, people opposed to slavery, merchants and bankers, moral reformers, especially with respect to Native Americans, and people who supported the market economy. Would it be Group A or Group B that would describe Andrew Jackson's supporters? Number 6, a crisis erupted in the 1830s over nullification. What was nullification? The result of a presidential veto that Congress failed to override, the notion that state delegations could change their votes in Congress within the 10 days that the president had to veto legislation, or the last option, the idea that a state could declare federal legislation invalid and prevent its enforcement and possibly secede. Number 7, which of the following best explains why people immigrated to the United States in the 19th century? Fertile land, jobs, and the chance for a better life, gold, potatoes, and the right to vote, or the last option, rich water sources, high wages, and labor protection? Question 8, which does not describe the South in the early 1800s? Widespread cotton production, wealth based on a slave economy, or export of manufactured goods? Number 9, which was the chief goal of the Compromise of 1850? To resolve Texas statehood issues, to preserve the balance between slave states and free states, or to preserve the Union? Number 10, what was not one of the North's strengths at the beginning of the Civil War? Several military colleges, well-established government, or many miles of railroad tracks? Number 11, how did the Emancipation Proclamation change the meaning of the Civil War? By eliminating slavery in the new states and territories, by freeing Southern troops from their military commitments so that they could return home, or the last option, by promising an end to slavery in the Confederate States. Number 12, what is the meaning of these words from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address? That the nation shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. The nation would soon have freedom and be governed by the people. Democracy in the United States would last, or the people were essential to freedom and government. Number 13, why is the Civil War considered the first modern war? Advanced strategies and unusual reconnaissance, new technology and advanced weaponry, successful generals and military blockade. Number 14, which was not an achievement of women during the Civil War? Maintaining life on the home front, running for political office, or developing a professional nursing corps? Number 15, use the graph to answer the following question. Which side had more casualties during the Civil War? The North or the South? Your options are casualties were about the same, it's unclear from the graph, the North. Number 16, what was the effect of the Homestead Act on Western settlement? It had little effect on Western settlement, but a big impact on the South. It brought a great number of settlers to California. White Americans settled much of the Great Plains. Number 17, how did 19th century railroads influence today's corporate America? Railroads stressed the benefit of competition and opposed monopolies. Railroads were the first businesses to raise funds by issuing stocks and bonds. Or the last option, railroads created an awareness of the importance of transportation. Question number 18, what law was passed to eliminate trusts, monopolies, or any agreement that restrained trade? Vanderbilt Banking Regulation, Rockefeller Monopoly Act, or the Sherman Antitrust Act? Number 19, how did the immigration of the late 1800s differ from earlier immigration? Immigration was much easier because of faster processing. Early immigrants came largely from Northern and Western Europe, while immigrants from the Southern and Eastern Europe dominated in late 1800s. Immigrants in the late 1800s came with great wealth and more education than earlier immigrants. Number 20, which group of innovations and inventions is in correct chronological order? The reaper, telephone, box camera, and cotton gin? Cotton gin, reaper, telephone, box camera, or telephone, cotton gin, reaper, box camera? 21, which statement is true of relations between Native Americans and the colonies or United States between 1607 and 1900? Native Americans avoided contact and conflict with non-Indians in North America as much as possible. Native Americans suffered hardships when Europeans first arrived in North America, but relations improved during the 1800s. Or the last option, the desire for land led colonists and then the United States government and people to push Indians off their land and destroy their way of life. Number 22, the Bill of Rights was written to protect the rights of the states, businesses, and there's a typo there, that should be B-U-S. Oh, there we go. Yep, that is correct. Businesses and individuals. Which one would it be? The states, businesses, or individuals? 23. Which of the following was not part of the Missouri Compromise of 1820? Maine entered the United States as a free state. Florida Territory was returned to the Spanish. Or Missouri entered the United States as a slave state. Number 24, what was the purpose of the Seneca Falls Declaration of Sentiments? To ask men to join the crusade for women's rights, to state the case for women's rights, or to explain to New Yorkers why women should get the vote? Using the graph above, choose the option below that would best replace the question mark in the diagram. Native Americans were moved to Canada, where they were given full citizenship. Native Americans removed white settlers from their land after a long, difficult war over land. Or Native Americans were moved west to what we now call Oklahoma, with many dying along the way. Number 26, which region in the U.S. saw the largest and most rapid increase in industrialization and was also the location where the Industrial Revolution began in the country? Was it the Southwest, the Northeast, or the Northwest? Number 27, which statement best explains the concept of manifest destiny? The idea that it was God's plan for the nation to expand across the continent, the belief that fate controlled what would happen to the United States, or the last option, the trust that the political solutions were usually possible. 28. The southern states began to leave the Union not long after this event. The fighting at Fort Sumter in South Carolina, the Battle of Gettysburg was lost by the South, or the election of Abraham Lincoln. Question number 29. Which option below describes the impact of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment on the U.S. after Reconstruction? These amendments were stepping stones to the economic equality for African Americans in the South by the early 1800s. These laws gave land back to African Americans by taking it from former slave owners. Or the last option, the amendments were rarely enforced in the South, and African Americans did not experience legal equality until the 1950s and 1960s. Number 30, which term describes Americans who disliked and did not trust immigrants? nativists, anarchists, or industrialists. 31, which was not a hazard faced by industrial workers in the 1800s, or the late 1800s rather. Long work hours, overheated work areas, high unemployment. 32, which of the following was not an attempt to form a union and organize workers in the late 1800s? American Federation of Labor, American Railway Union, or the Haymarket Organization of Workers. Number 33, what did the federal government do in response to union-led strikes? They acted quickly to end strikes using both the courts and federal troops. They remained impartial so the dispute could be settled by labor and management, or they attempted to mediate the issues so that both sides could be heard. These are both extra credit questions here at the end. 34. Place these major events from your U.S. History Part A course in the correct chronological order. A. Civil War. B. American Revolution. C. Louisiana Purchase. And D. Writing of the U.S. Constitution. Would they be in order by going D, C, B, A? Or the second option, B, A, C, D. Third option, B, D, C, A. 35. Review the source below from the Civil War. What type of resource is it, and how do you know? September 19th, 1862. Dear family, one moment of time before the mail leaves. I am well and in good spirits. We have just had a big battle day before yesterday. We have not sent any mail for about a fortnight, and I would have written more had I known we could have sent it. Will write more the first opportunity I have. We are on the move and are going into Virginia probably now. We have served in the last 2 battles. Give my respects to all friends and others. Yours truly, Henry, 14th Connecticut Volunteers. So the question is, what type of resource is it and how do you know? First option is that it's a primary resource because it is written during the time period by someone who witnessed the Civil War. Second option, primary resource because it is the first resource you would use on a research project about this topic. Or the last option, it's a secondary resource because it was written by someone who did not witness the Civil War. This brings us to the end of the U.S. History Part A midterm, the modified version, which covers units 3 through 7.